I actually think the best place to start is by rejecting the premise of so much of what people think a great leader needs to look like. And the model that we have inherited is we got to do all the things that people have always had to do, and also learn 12 new things every day and account for everything. And the truth is the lone heroic leader doesn't exist. And I think I am an optimist at heart. And more than that, I care about people. I care particularly about the people that are trying to give their life and sweat and blood and capital and families' future survival or their safety net. And they're doing it for a reason. And yet, over and over again, I talk to them, and the internal narrative is some version of I'm not doing enough. I'm not keeping up. I'm failing. And I think the actual place to start is by addressing the story that we're telling ourselves. And that story is really good for driving people to purchase more, but it's really bad for driving actual output and for driving productive growth. Because when we're weighed down, feeling guilty, frustrated by our team, that's not a recipe for actual effective and high-end performance. You know, after spending a decade studying the science of attention and how we can think about attention as a limited resource to drive focused outcomes and efforts, I jumped into Venus Aerospace. And the adventure of getting to be a part of a team that was building the world's most advanced rocket engine to unlock the hypersonic economy really taught me a whole lot about the nature of acceleration and speed. And I think by every definition, we're living at a moment that is defined by speed. And I heard the CEO of HP recently say that the future belongs to the fast. And but you don't go faster by caring more. And so I found that there's a model that we can use to drive performance, and it's actually driven by how we proactively eliminate the drag. Now, that feels like a nebulous term. And what is the drag? Because this is where organizations completely miss it. When I mention drag, we go towards, we need a better org structure. We need better processes. We need a new technology, because if one tool isn't good enough, we're going to put a new one in that people don't have a chance to implement or integrate with. And all of those things, decision-making, rights, bureaucracy, how do we avoid politics? All of them are driven fundamentally by the human factors. Even in rocket science, the output is driven by the people. And so how do we create the environment on a team level that unspoken assumptions don't rule the day? How do we create an environment on the organizational level where there's clear visibility in terms of this is where we're going and this is why we're going? And more than that, how do we create the honesty and the experience? I look at this on really three levels. And the first level is on the individual leader level. Well, that it turns out an unhealthy leader makes everything miserable for everyone. And an unhealthy team is often a function of an unhealthy leader. And so how do we attack the stories that we bring into the conversation that all but ensure that people can't give their best? And I'll also say that one of the interesting things about this moment is I was working with a Fortune 500 company that's going through a massive transformation. Who isn't these days, right? And the demands on the senior leadership team in order to implement this transformation are basically do your job that you've been doing and also add 12 more competencies and responsibilities to your plate. And that is a great recipe for all but guaranteeing a transformation won't occur. It turns out when you're under pressure and stress and going through change, you aren't at your best. And so I would present an option of how do we set this up for minimally viable performance and still to move the transformation forward? How do we say this is the baseline of what we must how we must behave, what we must do, and then acknowledge that anything else is gravy, right? Change is an interesting word because the truth is that if things aren't changing, we're bored, right? And so why are we undergoing changes in organizations? Because we demand it. But the challenge is we don't look at what that actually requires and demands of people and what that threatens. When something changes, it puts our future at stake because what we've been doing works. And so what I would actually suggest is that we start by asking, what space do we need to carve out? What stories do we need to reinforce? What inspiration do we need to provide? Because people resist change when they aren't the ones in control of it. And so I think that over and over again, what I'm seeing is we pick tools based on what seems like it could provide more capabilities. We redo processes based on what typically is helping the person who's in charge of the output of that process at the expense of the actual people that are delivering performance and actually delivering the product. And I think we need to start on the opposite side, and we need to start by saying, what would it take for us to have the people who this is impacting to be emotionally, to be relationally, and even to be purpose ready, right? Like they understand why, they feel safe in the team that they're in, and they have the internal narrative to say that they can accomplish it, they can do it. And I think a lot of ways that's the fun part of my job, is that I'm definitely not a motivational speaker who lives in a van down by the river, but this is a moment that we need. We need to be reminded of what's true. And when you're inside the organization, that can feel like the person who has adversarial interests is saying something that is completely a lie in order to try to convince you to do something that helps them. But on the outside, I actually have the chance to hear from those CEOs and from the executives, to hear their heart behind it, to hear why they're wanting to do it. Because if you don't grow, the organization is at risk for everyone in it, and the impact that they can make is lost. And so I have a chance to come in, listen to what it is that is actually driving it for the executive team, ensure the executive team is on the same page, because it turns out when you put thoroughbred horses and ask them to ride together, when they've been used to riding their own way and carving out their own path, that can be challenging. And then are giving the rest of the team the opportunity to hear it from an outside voice in order to help attack lies that often pervade as good ideas and strategy are passed down through the organization.